Last week, the city of Denver voted to decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms, also known as magic mushrooms, in a citywide initiative that passed by a very narrow margin. In today's episode of the Joe Pometto Law Show, we will discuss exactly what magic mushrooms are, what the term decriminalization means, and what effect this new law will have on Denver and the country as a whole. But before we dig in, if you are a fan of the show and want me to keep producing content, please subscribe to the show, like this video, and share this video on social media. Each one of those actions helps me build my audience and incentivizes me to create more content. Subscribe, like, and share. So, psilocybin mushrooms, also known as magic mushrooms or just shrooms, are mushrooms which grow naturally in the wild. But these aren't your average portobello or shiitake mushrooms. Unlike portobello and shiitakes, these mushrooms taste like crap, or so I'm told. But they carry with them a redeeming quality in the form of a special ingredient, psilocybin. Psilocybin is a psychedelic compound that, when consumed, can produce hallucinations, a distortion in one's sense of time, and euphoria. It can also have negative effects, like bringing on nausea and anxiety. Psilocybin has a similar effect to other psychedelic drugs. Think LSD, mescaline, or DMT. And if that doesn't give you context, perhaps you've seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Just imagine being Johnny Depp in that movie and you get a sense of the effect psilocybin has. But psychedelic effects aside, psilocybin has also been found to be effective in treating depression and may also be valuable in treating a variety of other mental health disorders. Thus, there is a growing movement in this country advocating for the decriminalization, medical legalization, and recreational legalization of magic mushrooms. And, no surprise, the city of Denver is the first to step into the waters of decriminalization of psilocybin. I say no surprise because I'm sure most of you know Colorado was among the first states to decriminalize marijuana and was the first to legalize recreational usage of marijuana. But anyway, back to the magic shrooms. Last week, on May 7th, 2019, the citizens of Denver voted in a ballot initiative to decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms. But what exactly does decriminalization mean? Well, according to the Denver Post, Initiative 301 says, personal use and possession of psilocybin mushrooms by people 21 years old and over will become the city's lowest law enforcement priority. It prohibits the city of Denver from spending resources to impose criminal penalties for the personal use of psychedelic mushrooms by people 21 and older. But does this mean that they are legal now? Well, no, it doesn't. According to Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser, as a matter of state and federal law, they remain illegal to buy, sell, or possess. So does the new ordinance actually mean anything? The answer to that question is yes. The new ordinance will not override the illegality of psilocybin mushrooms under state and federal law, but it does mean that local police and law enforcement will not be going out of their way to prosecute cases of possession or growth of the magic mushrooms. So you ask me, Attorney Pometto, how does this play out in reality? Well, I can tell you how decriminalization is played out right here in my own city, Pittsburgh PA. A few years ago, the city of Pittsburgh decriminalized possession of a small amount of marijuana. What that has meant in practice is that marijuana possession remains illegal, but law enforcement now treats it in a very different sense. As possession of a small amount is still a misdemeanor under state law, it is still charged that way. However, since the ordinance, the possession of marijuana will be charged as a misdemeanor, but in the vast majority of cases, the district attorney will dismiss the misdemeanor and allow the defendant to plead to a summary offense. This summary offense is generally a disorderly conduct offense that carries with it a fine and no further penalty. So in practical terms, decriminalization means the police can still arrest you and charge you as if you committed a misdemeanor. But then, as a matter of policy, the charge will be reduced to an offense and penalty that is equivalent to, say, a loitering or a very minor offense. It's a pretty good deal for most offenders, at least compared to how a misdemeanor would be dealt with in the past. In the past, an offender may be looking at a term of probation, even potential jail time, and a much larger fine and court costs. So decriminalization essentially reduces the penalties for possession of a substance without taking away law enforcement's power to regulate that substance. It is certainly a weird gray area, but it does reduce the stigma associated with the substance, and it reduces the resources that law enforcement will be required to spend on regulating the substance. So, in Denver itself, the actual effect of the law on defendants will likely be minimal from a purely law enforcement perspective. The number of actual prosecutions for magic mushrooms is comically low. Denver's district attorney noted, for context, between 2016 and 2018, our office filed 9,267 drug cases. Only 11 involved psilocybin. However, the greater effect of the initiative has been felt across the country. Criminal justice advocates see it as a positive first step towards reducing the number of people in jail who are incarcerated for drug possession offenses. According to the Denver Post, in the next couple months, Oakland, California City Council will be voting on whether to decriminalize all Schedule I plant-based medicines. We're talking ayahuasca, peyote, and psilocybin mushrooms. According to Carlos Plazola, co-founder of Decriminalize Nature Oakland, the measure already has 6 out of 8 votes, enough to pass. The Denver News yesterday, he said, gave their campaign positive momentum and is making council members more excited about the topic of decriminalization. This may be the beginning of a nationwide push to decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms and hopefully to make them available for medical treatment as well. I, for one, applaud the news out of Denver. I believe strongly that at the very least, psilocybin should be an option available to doctors to be used to treat ailments such as post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. I say this as a military veteran, and although I never served myself in a combat zone, I have many friends and brothers who have. The least we can do in this country is to provide those who have served our country with every option available to treat the conditions they now have as a result of that service. And frankly, I would apply this argument to all first responders and generally anyone in this country who needs treatment for an intractable illness. Now, there are several counter-arguments to highlight whether legalization, decriminalization of psilocybin is a good thing. Opponents will argue that psilocybin is a gateway drug that can lead to the use of harder drugs. Also, many will say that it opens the door for decriminalization of harder drugs. Thus, they would argue that psilocybin should remain illegal, as it will lead to negative societal consequences such as more drug addiction and drug-related problems. I would just say that many said the same thing about the decriminalization and legalization of marijuana, and many of those fears have proven unfounded. However, I would not doubt that legalization of marijuana has created some negative effects for society. Overall, it's a cost-benefit analysis, and I believe the benefits likely outweigh the costs when it comes to psilocybin. Anyways, in a future episode, we'll discuss the benefits and costs that decriminalization of drugs has had in several different countries around the world. For now, we'll focus on psilocybin. To recap, magic mushrooms in the city of Denver are now decriminalized. This does not mean that they are legal, but rather law enforcement will now use a much softer hand when regulating the use and possession of psilocybin. What this means from a practical perspective is that the penalties for possession will be greatly reduced, but the police can still stop and arrest you for possession. So be careful about putting those magic mushrooms on your quarter pounder. Not only will that taste terrible, but it can get you in trouble. This step that Denver has taken also likely means more momentum for the national movement to decriminalize psilocybin. And let's hope that, especially, the drug can be legalized for medical purposes. And oh, if you haven't seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, watch it. It's a trip. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for your time, and I hope you found this episode informative and fun.